On, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday edition of the NHL Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. So we're a little late. NFL is running a bit behind there, but there is no show on after us, so we have plenty of time to break down this 13-game slate. We are sponsored by Bet365, joined as always by Slim Cliffy. Cliffy, with the wise decision to not watch hockey last night and go see a movie. For a two-gamer, I was unbelievably tilted at Sorokin's performance. He made some unbelievable saves 5-on-5. He was 100% save percentage 5-on-5, but a team that doesn't take many penalties took 5, and the Devils scored 4 power play goals. And Sorokin wasn't even the highest owned goalie on the slate. That is just tilted.
Yeah, it's funny. I was lamenting yesterday about 6, 7, 8 years ago. It used to be the Buffalo Sabres that would get the 7:30 Eastern start Friday nights in the NHL, and then over the last few years, it's switched to the Islanders. You know, the Sabres 6, 7 years ago were a slog to watch, and even the Islanders now, like, it can get pretty boring. So I was like, you know what, I'll go see Killers of the Flower Moon. And then, funny enough, you get a 9-goal barn burner between the Devils and the Islanders. I probably missed one of the best Islander games that's going to happen this season. So, yeah, that's the way it goes. Pretty good performance by the Columbus goalie, Spencer Martin, as well last night. But we have 13 games to get through, 26 teams on this slate. I think only one of the teams that played last night is also playing tonight. So most of these teams should be, the Islanders. So, you know, most of these teams should be somewhat rested. Pretty excited to break this down. Yeah, and
Edmonton loaded their top line. It's now Hyman, McDavid, Draisaitl. If you want to stack them tonight, they're $25,300 on your DraftKings apps, unless you have Onyx tier, and then they're $19,700. That's not a thing, by the way. I'm pretty sure Haas believed us for like 8 months that there was Onyx tier pricing, but that's him. Well, before we get into the slate, I see a bunch of you in here. Make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. We will also Cliffy will always tweet out a link to the show. I will retweet it. If YouTube isn't for you, you can find all of our content over on the Stochastic Podcast channel. Make sure to leave a 5-star review there. Don't forget to sign up for the Stochastic Hall of Fame by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel. If you do placed in the top 3 contest with over 5,000 contestants, you'll get a shout out in our weekly Hall of Fame segment. You'll also win a free month of Stochastic package of your choosing. We're going away from the Platinum package, so it is a sports specific package. You can also only win once in a calendar year, but again, if you're winning multiple times, I think you're doing quite all right. Let's hop into this first game here. The New York Islanders with a 3.1 total heading into Buffalo. The Sabres, the Skinny Swords, have a 3.4 total. Buffalo going full blender here. They're searching for some combinations that are going to work. So they're going to combinations that they had at times last year that had good numbers. Tage Thompson, Dylan Cousins, Jordan Greenway on the top line. Second line of Tuck, Skinner, and Casey Middlestat. I would imagine the Islanders run back their same top 6. They looked very good last night. I know Anders Lee took a couple spins up with Horvat and Barzal, but I would imagine Holmstrom is going to start there.
Yeah, that's the one thing that really interested me was it was like half the game Holmstrom was off the top line. Like, it wasn't, just like a shift at the end of the game needing a goal or something. So, and they're expecting Barzal and Horvat to produce, and they haven't really done that at 5-on-5 yet. So I'm kind of anticipating that we might see somebody new on the top line. I mean, I always hope it's Oliver Wahlstrom. I know I never get what I want, so like it's never going to happen anyway, but definitely something to watch in warmups. Yeah, these new Buffalo lines are fairly interesting because these are lines that they ran last year, and it was something I thought they would do from the start of the season because it seemed like they really wanted to move Alex Tuch to a different line to try to balance things out a little bit, but they didn't. And they've had a rough start, so they are going back to the lines that they had last year. Greenway, Cousins, Tage Thompson on the top line. 2 things about this. One, when they went to this configuration, Tage Thompson's ice time really took a nosedive. Like there were a lot of games over the final 20 games of the season last year where Thompson was at 15, 16, 17 minutes a night. Now, He started there this season, but he had played over 21 minutes in each of the last 2 games. I don't think we're going to see him play 21 minutes here tonight. That's kind of one problem. The other problem is when they went to this configuration, they didn't use Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins in a shutdown role. They used the Middlestat Tuck duo in a shutdown role. So I assume Middlestat and Tuck will be going out against Horvat and Barzal. The problem with that is like the Nelson Palmieri Engvall line from the Islanders is probably the better defensive line. So it's one of those ways that Buffalo coaching staff could kind of be overthinking it a little bit. We are getting Semyon Varlamov in net, as you mentioned. Ilya Sorokin played well last night for the most part. Power play, not so much. Buffalo's typically not been drawing a lot of power plays either, so I don't really think this is a good power play matchup for the Sabres. I did notice on the top 2 stacks that Buffalo's really not coming in with a lot of ownership, under 3% on the top line, just over 3% on the second line. So, there's just not a lot of ownership coming in on the Sabres. It's not really a brutal matchup with the Islanders having to play a road back-to-back, but I also think where there are minutes concerns, these lines look pretty similar to me. 2 guys on the top line on the top power play unit, 2 guys on the second line on the second power play unit. Like I would lean towards Tuck, Skinner, and Middlestat just because I think Middlestat's a much better offensive player than Jordan Greenway. That's just that's kind of the tiebreaker for me. But I'm going to be honest, like I don't really have a ton of interest in the Buffalo side. The Islanders side is a little bit more interesting to me. Engvall, Palmieri, and Nelson is a line that I would have no problem going back to. The Tage Thompson line with Dylan Cousins was good together last year, but 2.7 expected goals against per 60 minutes. That's below league average. So it's not like a brutal defensive matchup. And I assume that they're not going to see much of the Sabres top pairs. So I think if anything for me out of this game, it's going back to Nelson Palmieri and Engvall. If you want to turn it into a power play stack, leave off Engvall and put on one of Horvat or Barzal, I mean, go ahead. But it is Islanders who I like best here. Just watch for warm-ups in case there is somebody new on the Islanders top line.
Yeah, Islanders second line is my favorite in this game. I don't think I'll be getting to anything in my single lineup from this game because it's a big slate and they're back-to-back. But in MME, I definitely will have some Islanders. If I was playing 150, I'd have some Islanders 2 being the most. I also like that Buffalo second line. I just don't love the matchup here. You can have some in MME, obviously. I think I'm saving that line for a different matchup. I think Tuck, Middlestat, Skinner is going to be a nice line. Kind of agree with you with the Greenway up in the top. Like, kind of hampers them offensively, although, we'll see what happens. A very important game, it feels like here. The Vancouver Canucks with a 3.1 total heading into Florida. The Panthers have a 3.5 total. Florida running back their top 6. Vancouver, soup. Ilya Mikheyev is back for Vancouver. He's not in the DraftKings player pool, though. And he's up with JT Miller and Brock Besser. That's usually a FanDuel mistake. Surprised that DraftKings was dropping the ball there. It's kind of unfortunate because that line is very interesting. I think Mikheyev is an upgrade from anyone else they can put on that line, like Philip DiGiuseppe or Connor Garland, or maybe with exception of Anthony Beauvillier, but he's already in the doghouse this season for whatever reason. On the Florida side, the second line of Tkachuk, Verhaeghe, Lusteron, getting the most ownership, they have a bit of negative leverage. I think in this game, if I was going to Florida, it would be that top line. 1, for ownership reasons. 2, there's not really a matchup that concerns me on the Vancouver side, and it's Casey DeSmith in net. So I think, honestly, both Florida lines are definitely in play. Don't get me wrong. I just want to keep getting, that Barkov, Evan Rodriguez duo at lower ownership as the season goes on. I think the ownership is going to start to even out more as the season wears on.
Yeah, I just double checked. Mikheyev's going to be playing with Pettersson and Kuzmenko, or at least that's where he was at morning.
That's my bad. Yeah.
At morning skate today.
Either way,
what I find interesting about that is that the Pettersson Kuzmenko Garland line had been pretty good defensively to start this season. Like pretty much the only Vancouver line that was actually doing well defensively. And adding Mikheyev should only help that. Like there are 2 things. If you look at, the underlying stats for Mikheyev, there are two things that generally stand out. One is he's a passer more than he's a shooter more than he is a passer. That's actually a good thing on that line. I think when you have Pettersson and Kuzmenko, like you want a guy that can add a little bit of finish, and I think Mikheyev can definitely do that. And he's good defensively, so I think he's going to be a nice addition to that line. And it's not going to make for an easy matchup. Whoever goes up against them, I mean, it's almost certainly going to be the Barkov line, but it's still the Barkov, Rodriguez, Reinhart line at home. You mentioned on the last show just how good Reinhart's fit in on the top line with Rodriguez and Barkov, and how good Rodriguez fit in with Barkov just the season in general. Around 10% ownership, I think that's just perfectly fine. The thing with Florida is like their power plays look pretty good this year, even with Ekman Larson running it, which I certainly was not expecting that. I thought they might have to go to a 5-forward power play unit at some point. Both teams are taking a lot of penalties so far this season. Now, Vancouver really didn't take a lot of penalties in general last year, but they were a top 10 team in penalties taken, I think, basically through like the first 30 games of the season. So kind of, history repeating itself a little bit here. And the problem with Vancouver is like, as good as their penalty kill turned itself around once Rick Tocchet took over last year, but it has been terrible to start this season so far. And if you're going into Florida with a terrible penalty kill, you might end up having a bad time. The Vancouver penalty kill is giving up the third most shot attempts against in the league, the most shots against in the league. And they're giving up double-digit goals against per 60 minutes while on the penalty kill. So this is a pretty good power play matchup for the Florida Panthers, who also do tend to draw a lot of power plays as well. So you have a home team that usually draws power plays, a road team that usually takes a lot of penalties, and, good power play, bad penalty kill. Like, this game screams power play stack to me on the Panther side. So, I agree with you. I think the second line is in a pretty good matchup going up against JT Miller, but I honestly want as many pieces of that top power play as I can. So I think I kind of lean towards the Barkov line here, which is not something that I do a lot. Usually I do use the Florida second line, but if you want to leave off Rodriguez and put on Matthew Tkachuk, just full on power play stack, all 5 Florida guys. I think that's in play, even on a 13-game slate like this. It's Casey DeSmith and net for Vancouver. It's not Thatcher Demko. Any goalie can steal any game. That's kind of, one of the neat things about the NHL. But I suspect, yeah, exactly. But I suspect it could be a long night for DeSmith. So even with double-digit-ish ownership, if you power play stack, there aren't going to be a lot of people in a large field tournament, or a large percentage of people that have that. So I think in this game more than anything, it's a Florida power play stack that I like. If you want to just stack the top line, leave Tkachuk off, I think you're perfectly fine doing that. Not a whole lot interests me on the Vancouver side. I would probably go to the Miller, Besser, DiGiuseppe line just to kind of avoid the Barkov matchup, but it is the Florida side I like better here.
Yeah. I was about to go off on a tangent about Erod. He must have the attitude of Brandon Peary or something, he keeps bouncing around the NHL, but hopefully he finds a home here. Really like him on the top line.
He did get a 3-year contract with him, so he's going to be there for a while.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's good. Good. Let's move on to the next one. I don't even know what to call this. Washington Capitals with a 3.3 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 3.2 total. Even this game is lined at 6.5. Washington, I don't even think, has scored 3 goals this season. Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Raphael, Harvey Pinard on the top line. Top line for Washington tonight: Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, Matthew Phillips. Pour one out for the homie Whiskers. Matthew Phillips going from a healthy scratch, demoted in Calgary, to the top line with the Capitals. You love to see it. No one mismanages players more than the Calgary Flames.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with this game. We were talking about this beforehand. Both these top lines are getting 4 and change % ownership. I see myself freezing a little bit. That was my own fault. I tried to open another browser, but I don't know, man. 14-6 for Ovechkin, Strome, Phillips kind of catch my eye.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing that I did note in the picks article today, over at Stokastic.com, just about every day, I have a free picks article that everybody can go read. Just head on over to the NHL section. I did write up the Washington top line because they are priced as a filler stack. Basically, they're under 15K on DraftKings. What I did note was that Ovechkin over the last 2 years, when he's with Dylan Strome, the team generates 3.3 expected goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. There's no other center that Ovechkin has regularly played with, whether Kuznetsov or Backstrom, that is over 2.8 per 60 minutes. So he has had better, chance generation numbers with Dylan Strome than with Kuznetsov, then with Backstrom, et cetera, et cetera. You put Matthew Phillips on the other side. It's kind of funny seeing Ovechkin, who's like, the guy that'll put up like 200 hits in a year, and then, 5'7", 150-pound Matthew Phillips on the other side. But that's what they're going with. Like, anybody that's unfamiliar with Phillips, he's generally been one of the best AHL scorers for a few years now. Just for whatever reason, the Flames didn't like him and got rid of him, and now here he is on the top line. I think he had a 2-point game a couple of games ago for Washington, so it was against Calgary. And here's another thing: is Montreal's had a terrible penalty kill this year, but beyond that, is Montreal's taking over 6 penalties per game. Now, obviously, that's going to go down, but I think it kind of speaks to, let's call it, the youthful exuberance that the Montreal Canadiens roster is playing with. Yeah, some might call it stupidity. I call it youthful exuberance because I like to look at the bright side of things sometimes.
Glass half full guy. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. So Washington could get a lot of power play time here tonight, and the way they run their power plays, it's not 2 even units, but it's basically like 60-40. And Strome and Phillips both play on the second unit, and Alex Ovechkin plays both halves. So Ovechkin will play the entire power play, and then the other 4 guys will swap. So Ovechkin, Strome, and Phillips are technically perfectly correlated on the second power play unit. And if you look at Washington's power play number, again, small sample, it's only been 4 games. If you look at Washington power play numbers so far this year, they've been way better with Rasmus Sandin on the blue line than with John Carlson on the second power play unit. So I actually kind of like Washington's top line here. They are coming in with a little bit of negative leverage, 4.6% DraftKings ownership expected on top stacks, 2.3% top 2 probability, but they're coming in like they're just a better option than the second or third lines is the way that I look at it. And I'm not concerned about the Nick Suzuki matchup. Suzuki and Caulfield typically have had terrible defensive numbers together, so I kind of like Washington won the most in this game, which, as a Habs fan, it feels tough to say, but that's just kind of where we are now. On the flip side, like, there is a lot to like about Montreal playing against Washington. Like, Washington themselves have looked absolutely terrible this year. Near the bottom of the league in a lot of defensive metrics. Like, when you see San Jose and Washington kind of close together in a lot of defensive metrics, things are going really bad. So, if you want to go to Montreal 1, I think that's perfectly fine. Caulfield, Suzuki, and Harvey Pinard. I kind of like the second line a little bit better. Newhook, Slavkovsky, and Tanner Pearson. Slavkovsky, I think he's looked the best of any Montreal forward so far this season. Like, I've watched every game that they played, and he's the guy that always stands out. Like, yeah, Caulfield will always have, these amazing shots. Like Suzuki, definitely he can turn pucks over and things like that, but there are these little plays that Slavkovsky makes, like these little 8-10-foot passes that really clear a lane for a forward that have been pretty impressive. So if you want a 2-man like Newhook, Slavkovsky, or just, one-off, Slavkovsky or Newhook or something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. So both top lines here are in play for me. It's the Washington top line that I like quite a bit more in this matchup, especially when you're considering how many penalties Montreal is taking. But I don't mind picking some one-offs from the Montreal second line.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people gave Montreal front office a lot of slack for picking Slavkovsky 1 overall. Jeff Gorton, very good talent evaluator. Not the best drafter, but, Slavkovsky looks like he put on some weight. He's not getting, like, ragdolled every time he takes the ice. So I do like that Montreal line. But, again, I think Washington top line is my favorite from this game. Let's move on to the Leafs. The Toronto Maple Leafs with a 3.7 total heading into Tampa. The Lightning have a 3.2 total. Man, I wish the Tampa middle six, like bottom 6, had a decent line because I really want to attack that Toronto bottom 6. But Tampa just doesn't.
I mean, they could. I think they should just leave Jeannot and Esamont together and let them be kind of like pests, forechecking pests, because that's what they're really good at. But they want to keep them separated for some reason, kind of like the offspring.
Yeah, and Tyler Bertuzzi is playing tonight. He was, I guess, questionable. He had a minor injury. Leafs top line not getting a ton of ownership compared to the top two stack percentage, about 8%. Again, like these big guns on the slate, we have McDavid, we have McKinnon, we have Matthews. I think Toronto one's always in play. Tampa Bay is nothing to ride home defensively. There isn't really a matchup that worries me. They're almost 4,000 less. Yeah, they are 4,000 less than Edmonton won. Tampa Bay is either starting Jonas Johansson or a guy who couldn't beat out Jonas Johansson to get playing time. So, like, I like going to Leafs one here. They're always in play. There's really not much you can say about them. You want to go to Leafs too, like, I guess that's fine. I'd probably just like one off Nylander if I was going that route. On the Tampa side, like, I just don't know. They're not getting any ownership. The Leafs have issues on the blue line, and in that, I just, maybe go to that Hagel, Stamkos, Cirelli line. I'm having trouble with Tampa Bay here. Like this, they just have not looked great.
No, I will say I think it is Stamkos, Hagel, Cirelli that I kind of like best. Like Hagel and Cirelli have actually looked pretty good offensively together so far this year. 3.2 expected goals per 60 minutes. I mean, that's going back to last year, but 3.2 expected goals, 4 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 when those two are on the ice. Brandon Hagel, he got booted off the top line, off the top power play unit, and still has 6 points in 5 games. Like, this guy just absolutely will not be denied. You got to appreciate that a little bit. The problem is, like, they're pretty expensive. Like, I think if I were to approach Tampa Bay's second line, I would just two-man Hagel and Cirelli and leave Stamkos off and just save that money and hope that, Stamkos doesn't go nuts on the power play or something like that because, he certainly can. I think he's done it once already so far this season. So I don't really like the Tampa top line. Alex Barré-Boulet, God bless the guy. He's the Matthew Phillips of Tampa Bay, where he's always, leading in scoring in the AHL, can never break through to the NHL. They are going to get second line matchups. So I think that's something that does work into their favor a little bit. But it is the Toronto side that I like best here. Tyler Bertuzzi, they're saying he is expected to play, even though I think he had a maintenance practice or whatever yesterday. They did say
morning.
Yeah. So, you can just go full on stack Toronto one. Like, I was wondering how Matthews had done against Tampa Bay in the regular season over the last couple of years. He has I think it's 9 points in 5 games with 26 shots in those 5 games. So I'm not worried about the matchup, especially when you look at, he might face off against Hagel and Cirelli, and it was as good as they've been offensively, they've given up chances defensively. Like, they're north of 3 expected goals against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. That's not good. The Tampa top line's been even worse at 5-on-5 defensively. Like, they've just been flat out bad, like Anaheim Ducks-esque defensively. So I don't think it's a bad matchup at all for Toronto. If you want to leave off Bertuzzi and make it more of a power play stack by adding a Nylander, adding Tavares, Tavares has looked pretty good to start this year as well. Even if he's not getting a ton of ice time like Matthews and Marner are. Like, Matthews and Marner might play 23 minutes again here tonight. But it is the Toronto top line I like in this in this game the best, and by quite a bit. I have no problem going to the Tampa side, like I said, but I think it would be more their cheaper options and not necessarily paying up for Kucherov or Point or something like that. The last note I kind of want to make here is that Toronto third and fourth line, we always talk about how bad they are, and they definitely haven't been playing well. It makes me kind of just want to maybe one off Nick Paul. You know what I mean? He's on the third line. He's going to get those bottom 6 matchups, but he's also on the top power play unit. So I think he already has 2, if not 3 power play goals this season. So I think one off Nick Paul is just fine. One off Mikey Esamont, he scored the other day. He's been shooting a lot. He just doesn't get a ton of minutes. One off Tanner Jeannot, can't believe I'm saying that. But things like that from the Tampa bottom 6 is kind of what I'm most interested in from that team.
Yeah, I'd probably just want off Nick Paul there for their top power play looked pretty good the other night. Kucherov was shooting a ton. I just can't full stack that line with Alex Barré-Boulet there. Tampa 2, my favorite line there. Toronto won, my favorite in the game. Let's move on to the next one. The Philadelphia Tortorellas with a 2.4 total. Heading into Dallas, the Stars have a 3.5 total. I could give you the Flyers lines. They'll probably change. It is Atkinson, Tippett, Couturier, Konechny, Lawton, Forrester in the lineup on the top stacks right now. Will it stay that way? Nah. But Dallas 1 coming with almost no ownership. Now, the caveat to Dallas 1 getting no ownership here is I watched that Flyers Oilers game the other day, and oh my God, did Tortorella just completely grind that pace to a halt. And it was just, they looked like they're playing duck, duck, goose in the neutral zone. It was one of the ugliest games I've ever seen. So there's concerns there. Now, that game is in Philadelphia, where Philadelphia can dictate the matchups. It is in Dallas. So I think Dallas 1 coming in under 1% is in an excellent spot. They're excellent on the power play. They finally got going the other night. I think, you can go to the Dallas 1 for sure. I also like the Dallas Wyatt Johnston line.
This is what concerns me about Dallas is I'm worried that they're going to take the approach that Boston kind of did last year, and that they realize just how good they are, and that they don't need to play the top line 19 minutes, that they can play the top line 16 minutes and still win games pretty handily. That's kind of a little bit of a concern. Like, I think the last game was Roope Hintz's first game or second game back. But it was a tight game. And the top line guys still only got about 16 minutes, whereas I think Matt Duchene was at like 18:45 in the last game. He got like 2 or 3 minutes more than the guys on the top line did. I'm worried that Dallas is going to do that a lot this year because they can get away with it. Like, they have 3 really good lines. Like, they have a really good defense core. They have a great goaltender. Like, that's what happens when you're a cup contender. You don't. Unless you're the Colorado Avalanche and you only have 7 good players, like, you can actually just, spread out the ice time. That's the one thing that concerns me with Dallas. Like, yeah, if you're playing 150 lineups, you absolutely will have like a few percent of the Dallas top line. I think it'd be foolish not to. But the other thing is, like, it's not really a great matchup. Like, this Travis Sanheim, Cam York pair, Yam Cork pair from the Philadelphia Flyers side has been great to start this season. And York is a defenseman I've been high on for a long time. Sanheim had a couple down years, but he looked really good earlier in his career. Got to figure maybe he's just kind of, finding something again. And then they're going into Couturier, Tippett, and Atkinson. And Couturier's looked pretty good this season. So I'm worried it's not a great top-line matchup for them. Now, if you want to go down to like Dallas 2 or even Dallas 3, like go down to the Ben Johnston Dodonov line. You get Ben on the top power play unit. Johnston and Ben have played really well together going all the way back to the start of last season. They're coming in with negative leverage. Obviously, I don't think you have to full stack them, but I think the where you can take advantage of the Flyers is once you get into the second and third lines. I don't really like the idea of stacking a $21,600 Dallas Stars top line that might only play 16 or 17 minutes tonight going up against Sean Couturier on a 13-game slate. Like, it just feels like there are just way too many reasons not to play them. And the only reason really to play them is the ownership. And if you're going to play them because they're not carrying a lot of ownership, like, I'll just go play Colorado. You know what I mean? Like, I know McKinnon and Rantanen are going to play 22 or 23 minutes unless they get injured. So that's just kind of where I'm at. Like, I think there are other spots, like we're going to get to the Pittsburgh game here in a little bit. Like, I just think there are other similarly priced spots that are going to be going up against, one of the best defensive centers of this generation, a top pair that is playing extremely well where they might get limited minutes. So I think it's the Dallas, the Ben line that I like best from the Dallas side. It honestly feels like a game that I'm probably just not going to stack either side here, though. It honestly just looks like a really brutal matchup for Dallas 1. I don't really want to full stack either their second or third lines, and I definitely don't want to play the Flyers going into Dallas.
Yeah, and John Tortorella is a very defensive coach, and you take Tony DeAngelo off this team and add in Sean Couturier, like, you're going to get very slow-paced, mucky, defensive, choppy games. So, yeah, I kind of tend to agree there. Sign up using the link in the description box below to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. What do you get if you sign up for I always say platinum, but it's whatever. Player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations. You get access to the Discord. I'm always in there. Cliffy's always in there. Jake's ridiculously good jawline is in there. You have a bunch of sharp people in the chat there willing to help almost anybody as long as you come in not like you own the place. You know, it's a very good camaraderie in there. So, you know, going premium, an elite option here. You got to use the link in the description box below. It'll take you to get to weekly or monthly packages. I don't know why you're waiting. We had a deal last week. Now you have to pay the full price, but it's still really not that bad for what you get. So click that link in the description below. Come into the Discord, say what's up, say I came from the show, and we'll welcome you. And make sure to keep your hands and feet where we can see you. That's Clayton's rule. Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.5 total heading into Chicago. The Bedards have a 2.5 total. My boy, Taylor Radish on the top line with Connor Bedard and Taylor Hall. Ryan Donato got moved down to the fourth line. I don't know, man. Like, I just don't think it is the time for the Bedard Hall Radish line in single entry on the slate. I think in MME getting above the field won't take too much. They're currently projected for 2.4% ownership in our ownership run. I think you can play them in 1 to 3. I just don't know if I can get there. I like the Vegas top line here. They're not coming in with too much ownership. The Eichel hate still rolling along. I don't know why. All he does is win. Since he got to Vegas, Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev. I think you can leave Barbashev off if you want and add in another power play piece like Theodore or Stone or whatever you want. But like Vegas won for me. I do have a little bit of interest in that Chicago one line. I just don't think I'm getting there in one lineup.
Yeah, I have interest in the Chicago line. The reason for that is I'm going by our buddy Quick Party's line matching. He has a service that just kind of shows stats and line matching from different teams. It's not through Stochastic or anything. It's just a guy we know through Twitter. But he thinks Bedard's not going to be going out against the top line for Vegas. And low key, the Chandler Stevenson, Mark Stone line has been pretty bad defensively since they've been put together. I think part of it is playing with Brett Howden. Like, you know, all respect to Brett Howden. He turned from what looked like to be an AHL career into an NHL career, and he's won a Stanley Cup, but he's not a good defensive player, and he tends to sometimes take stupid penalties. You know, the Bedard top line, they have been fairly porous defensively, but they do generate a ton, 3.1 expected goals together this season. Now, obviously, Hall missed a game. Radish, this is his first game there. Don't forget, this is Chicago's first home game of the season. They started with 5 games on the road, which feels like a pretty brutal schedule for them. But if they're going to go up against that Stone line, which has not been good defensively, as I mentioned, 3.1 expected goals against per 60 minutes with Brett Howden on that line. Like, that's well below average. Like, there were like 3.1 expected goals against, and there are seasons where Mark Stone's at like 2.1. Like, they've been pretty bad defensively. And like I said, the Bedard line's been generating a ton, and there's not a lot of ownership coming in on him. I don't think honestly, if you just want to use Bedard and Hall or just Bedard as a one-off, I think that's fine. He's been he's still generating a ton of shots. Like, I know he was held without a shot in his last game, but like I said, it was the 5th game of a 5-game road trip to start his NHL career. Like, I'm not going to ding him too much for that one. But you know, first home game, playing against the top team. Like I said, I think they're going to avoid the top line matchup, which is the tough one on the Vegas side. I kind of like the Chicago top line here, and like Vegas won, perfectly fine to use. Don't get me wrong, especially where they're coming in with positive leverage. It is a very good matchup for this Vegas line. So Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev, as you said, perfectly acceptable to go with. I just think this might be the night that Bedard finally kind of breaks out. It seems like it could be a sneaky good matchup for him going up against the middle six for Vegas. And if I can get, you know, Bedard and Hall at like 2, 3, 4% ownership, I might take that chance here tonight. So I think it's both top lines I like the best. Vegas 2 certainly in play. Stone and Stevenson and Howden still generate well offensively, and Howden's mid-price 2,500, so really save a lot on that line. But I think it is the Bedard line that I like best here.
Yeah. If I again, I'm probably not getting there in one lineup. If I was playing 3, the chances get stronger, and if I was playing 20, I would absolutely have some of that line. Columbus Blue Jackets with a 2.5 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 3.6 total. Columbus played last night. They beat the Flames. What's his face? Patrick Laine is going to be out tonight, so Alex Texier is going to be centering Fantilli and Cole Sillinger.
They said it was going to be Jack Roslovic. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the team sent out a note saying it's going to be Jack Roslovic. That almost never happens, but it's a good heads up for us.
Yeah, that's Columbus pretty good with the lines and stuff, so that's nice to see. Minnesota going running back their top line, second line of Joel Eriksson, Marcus Johansson, Sammy Walker. Now, again, Minnesota won massive chalk here tonight, projected ownership of 26%. That's about what they were projected last slate, and that's about what they were on the slate. Now, they got there because Montreal took 647 penalties that game. I feel like Minnesota was on the power play for the whole second period in that game. This isn't like, okay, I understand why this line is that high owned, and this definitely isn't as bad of chalk as Chalk Nashville won from last year. Like, I just don't know if I can play a 25% owned line that isn't fully correlated on the power play. Zuccarello hasn't looked great going back to last year. Hartman's not on the top power play. Kaprizov's the man, but like their 5-on-5 numbers for that line in particular aren't great. Like, I just don't know if I can eat the chalk. Like, it's an elite matchup. Columbus is back-to-back on the road. If Minnesota's your team, play him, obviously, because I went on that rant about ownership doesn't matter, blah, 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 you can get different. I'm not balking at the ownership because it's the matchup. It's just like, there's factors that doesn't make them the best line on the slate.
Yeah, I was looking at because the Minnesota top line was really, really good 2 years ago. And then last year, they really, really fell off. And I was looking at their numbers with and without Jared Spurgeon on the ice with them. And yeah, their expected goals for go down 30% when they're on with a defenseman that is not named Jared Spurgeon. And I think that kind of speaks to the lack of good defensemen that they've had. It certainly puts a lot more pressure on Calen Addison. And Calen Addison, 3,700 tonight on FanDuel, and he played 22 minutes on the plus top power play time in the last game. So we'll get to defensemen at the end of the show, but Calen Addison on FanDuel, I don't want to say he's a free square, but it kind of feels like a free square. The thing with Minnesota is, as we always mention, is that Joel Eriksson X-line takes the top line matchups when they're at home. So they're going to be going out against that Jenner, Gaudreau, Marchenko line. And then after that, there is nothing defensively that can stop the Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello line. But like I said, they don't generate nearly as much without Jared Spurgeon. And Columbus is a team that usually doesn't take a lot of penalties. So if they're not generating much of 5-on-5 and they get 2 power plays instead of like 7 or whatever it was against Montreal,
it was 9.
Can they put up enough to have a GPP winning score? I mean, yes, obviously they can. Just about anything can happen in a single hockey game. But do I want to do that at 25% plus ownership? I think if I were to go to the Minnesota side, even though Columbus doesn't take a lot of penalties, I'd do something like take Hartman out and put Joel Eriksson in and make it a power play stack. Make sure I have Calen Addison on the blue line. Like, I don't really have a problem playing Minnesota 1 here tonight, even at 25%. But I think I would be finding it a way to turn it into a power play stack rather than have it be an even strength stack. And obviously, you got to have Kaprizov in there. But where Addison is still so cheap, and like I said, he got over 22 minutes in the last game. And a big problem with him has been minutes. He was playing 15 minutes a game or whatever, 16 minutes a game last year. If he can stay up over 20 minutes, like, that's a guy that you want to include with your Minnesota stack. So I'm fine with choking on the chalk. I think personally in my lineup, I won't be playing them, but I don't really have a problem with like putting Eriksson with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, making sure you have Addison on the blue line, like those types of things. Another thing I'll mention is the Minnesota third line. Marco Rossi is still second on the team in shot rate behind Kirill Kaprizov. They're doing some work down there on the third line. And like I said, Columbus has nothing that can defend anything outside the top line. So I don't know if I would full on stack, but like a 2-man of Rossi Gaudreau, like if you're looking like, there are super expensive stacks. There's Colorado, Toronto, Edmonton. There's all those. If you're looking for a super cheap 2-man, I don't mind dipping down to like a Gaudreau Rossi 2-man going up against the bottom 6 of Columbus, especially where if Minnesota spreads out the ice time, because they should beat Columbus's brains in here tonight. If they start spreading out the ice time, maybe they see more minutes than we think. So I honestly don't mind like a 2-man out of the Minnesota 3 line here.
I like them too. I'm glad you mentioned them. But if I am power play stacking, it's a nice little way to get a little bit different with Minnesota. The 2 guys I would have to have in a power play stack from the Wild are Kaprizov and Joe Eriksson Ek. They're by far their 2 best players this season. So just keep that in mind. Let's move on to the next one. San Jose Sharks with a 2.4 total. Heading into Nashville, the Predators have a 3.6 total. Nashville was chalk all last year. Now Ryan O'Reilly, who's good, with Philip Forsberg, who's good, and Juuso Parsinens, who holds his own, is only 4.9% against the Sharks, which is literally a generationally bad defensive team. I don't get it. They're 16,300. Ryan O'Reilly is my big dog plus money prop of the night. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I have that every day on most slates, as long as it's not like a 2-game slate. Check out my Twitter for that. But yeah, I really like Nashville 1 here. I feel like I'm missing something, and that happens a lot. But like Cliffy usually helps me with that. What am I missing here?
I mean, it doesn't feel like you're missing anything because they have a 3.6 total, which is the same total of the Minnesota team that we just talked about that has a 25% top line. Now, I think part of it might be like Roman Josi is a player Minnesota doesn't have. So like he figures into that goal total as well. The Nashville, like that Nashville quote 4th line with Trainin and Cole Smith. Like I think Trainin played like 18 minutes in their last game while Cole Smith was over 15 minutes. Like they're not a genuine 4th line.
He scored twice, Cole Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Against your Rangers. So I think that's part of it, is that there are depth lines for the Predators that could actually put up some goals because they are playing reasonably well. Like I thought Nashville would be a doormat this year, and they've actually looked pretty good holding their own. Like they certainly haven't looked terrible, which is what I thought that they might be. But the top line has been incredible. 4.7 expected goals generated in their 45 minutes together. That's per 60 minutes, both getting like 19 to 20 minutes a game, both on the top power play unit. I did write up Philip Forsberg for that picks article. Again, free to read for anybody over at Stokastic.com. Creating almost 36 shots per 60 minutes. Like they're shooting under 8%, which is the problem. Forsberg is the top projected winger that we have priced under $7,000 on DraftKings tonight. And it doesn't seem like a lot of people are going to be playing them. It's just a matter of what does your Nashville stack look like? Is it just the top line? Do you take off Parssinen and put on Evangelista? Do you have Roman Josi in your stack? I think that's the big issue I don't think the issue is do you play Nashville tonight? Because San Jose is probably going to be the worst defensive team in the league this year. It might give Anaheim's team from last year a run for their money, a worst defensive team in the last decade. But the question is exactly how do you build the stack? Now, San Jose's penalty kill has looked abominable to start this year. I think you want to get guys on the top power play unit. You want, like with Cody Glass out, Evangelista's on the top unit. They do run double defensemen, which is kind of interesting. I think this is one of those nights where you can definitely use Josi and Barry. If you don't want to stack Nashville forwards, I think you can stack Nashville defensemen in this one. And the Ryan McDonough, Alex Carrier pairing has been one of the best in the NHL to start this season. So, like, there are plenty of options to go with Nashville. I just really love this top line here tonight. So, yeah, Nashville 1 for me. If you're going to dip down, like, into the depths of the Nashville forwards, it would be going to, like, Trainin Smith or, add Nyquist or something like that. They do mix up their lines a fair bit as well. They're one of those teams that do that. Maybe you just want to like one off a Trainin or one off a Sissons or something like that. Maybe not necessarily full stack, but there are things to like all over this Nashville side. On the San Jose side, like, man, like I kind of felt like a marriage that was falling apart after 15 years. Like I really tried to make it work with the San Jose Sharks to see if there's anything that could be of value here tonight going up against a really bad Nashville team. Or like I shouldn't say a really bad Nashville team, a Nashville team that has their questions defensively. Let's put it that way. On it, there's just nothing. There's just nothing. Like Mike Hoffman honestly has the shooting rate of a third pair defenseman, and he's supposed to be one of their top goal scorers. Like I definitely don't want to go go use their top line. Hurdle, declare Barabanov. They haven't been very good, and they're going up against O'Reilly and Forsberg, who have been. So if you want to use like a one-off Philip Zadina or something like that, I think you can do that. But I think that's about as far as I'm going with the Sharks.
Jake just sent me a message. He said, Cliffy, you said leave off Parsinens in favor of Angelista. Is he on power play 1? He said, Jake says he sees Novak there.
Is our buddy Novak on the top power play unit? I mean, Evangelista played there in the last game, so that's kind of
after Glass got hurt.
Yeah, that's what I'm going by.
Yeah, we'll have to check on that.
Yeah, well, why don't you set up the next game, and I'll go see if any of the beat writers have mentioned anything.
Oh, I will set it up. All right. We got the Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3.6 total heading into Haas's St. Louis. The Blues have a 3 total. This is another game where I'm confused at the low ownership, right? Because Pittsburgh's going into St. Louis. St. Louis isn't very, very good defensively at all. Both of the Pittsburgh top lines are coming in around 1.5% projected ownership here. Top line is 20,600, projected at around 1.5%. And then Malkin, who's looked excellent with Riley Smith and Ricard Raquel, 17,400 at that low ownership. There isn't a matchup on St. Louis that I'm scared about, like Jordan Binnington in net. Like that doesn't scare me. Jordan Binnington punching me in the face is more scary than Jordan Binnington trying to save shots. So like, I don't know. I really like Pittsburgh here. It's just a question of, right, who you going to, like, if you're going to pay up in one lineup for these expensive lines, are you going to do Pittsburgh? Are you going to do Edmonton? You're going to do Colorado? You're going to do Dallas? You know what I mean? There's questions, but like with this ownership, I feel like I'm missing something. What am I missing?
Yeah, just to touch on Nashville, I did find a guy who writes for Nashville Hockey Now, and that's one of those. That's a reputable news outlet. It was Evangelista practicing on the power play yesterday at practice, so I would expect Evangelista on the top power play unit. I don't know what you're missing in this game because I feel like I'm missing something too, especially where St. Louis uses Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou against opposing top lines. And Thomas and Kyrou are not a good defensive line, and they've been really, really bad to start this year. 78 shot attempts against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like, that's a low-level penalty kill. Like, I'm not going to lie. Going back to last year, when they're on the ice without Pavel Buchnevich, who's not going to be playing tonight, even though I think he was at morning skate, but they said he's not ready to play yet. 3.4 expected goals against, 4.1 actual goals against without Buchnevich. Those are god-awful defensive numbers, and that's the matchup that Crosby is going to get tonight. The Crosby line has looked really, really good for the Penguins so far this season. 3.4 expected goals per 60 minutes. Crosby has 5 points at 15 shots in 4 games, almost 4 shots per game. Like Jake Gensel is shooting as well, so is Brian Rust. The one issue is that St. Louis doesn't typically take a lot of penalties. They were at the bottom of the league last year for penalties taken. They're near the bottom of the league again this year. So Pittsburgh may not get a lot of power play time. That was a godsend last year because, that power play looked pretty bad at times. But it has been better to start this season with Erik Karlsson there. You would want some more power play time. But again, I'm looking at this line coming in under 2% owned. They've been really good. They get a great matchup, 5-on-5 at least. They are at least one of the expensive lines that I'm considering here tonight. I don't know, exactly how people want to approach this. I don't think this is a place where I would go in power play stack, especially, like I said, especially where the Blues don't take a lot of penalties. So it would be playing either of the even strength lines. If you want to dip down to Pittsburgh too, because you need to save money for your other stack or whatever, I think that's perfectly fine because they're coming in with negative or positive leverage as well. And they've been really, really good to start this year too. Like Malkin has 18 shots and 7 points in 4 games. Like that's stuff he was doing in the playoffs 10 years ago. I just think this is a really, really good spot for the Penguins top line. They're my favorite line in this game, but either of the Penguins top 2 lines certainly in play here. I think if I'm playing anything from the St. Louis side, I wrote up Kevin Hayes in the picks article today. It is just to highlight how well him and Vrana and Blaze have been playing on the St. Louis third line. They've been their best line so far this season. They're controlling 60% of the shot attempts while they're on the ice. That's an elite line. Small sample size. We'll see how things go. But what I mentioned in the article is that with Pittsburgh's top guys off the ice, they're at 43% ownership of the shot share. So that St. Louis third line should be able to dominate Pittsburgh's bottom 6 here tonight. So if I'm playing anything from the Blues side, it's that Hayes, Blaze, Vrana line. I don't know if I would full stack them, but certainly 2-man of like Vrana and Blaze, Vrana and Hayes, Hayes and Blaze, something like that. Hayes and Blaze. There we go. Sounds like a weed company. But I do like the St. Louis third line, like by far the best in this particular matchup for them here tonight.
Yeah, I do like that St. Louis third line. And they have a 3 total, so I don't know what that speaks to really. But Pittsburgh's look pretty good to start this season. As we mentioned off the top of the show, we are sponsored by Bet365. Thank you very much for that. If you deposit $10 and bet 5 of them, you get $150 in free bonus bets. If you are in Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, and Colorado, you can take advantage of that. If you live very close to one of those states, you probably should hop in the car and take advantage of this deal. You have to be 21 plus. Unless you're in Kentucky, you have to be 18 and have 4 teeth. Also, if you want to sign up for this, you can tail my big dog plus money prop of the night, which is Ryan O'Reilly, an assist. You can tail that on Bet365. And if you or anyone else you know has a gambling problem, call it 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's move on to the final 4 of the night. The Carolina Hurricanes with a 3 total heading into Colorado. The Avalanche have a 3.4 total. I saw somewhere that Aho is a game time decision, but leaning towards not playing. We'll have to see on that.
I'm assuming he's out. He skated in a defenseman's sweater at morning skate today. That would tell me he's not playing.
Yeah, so he's probably out tonight. And like without Aho and this game being in Colorado, McKinnon and Rantanen are going to avoid the meat grinder of Martinook, Stahl, and Fost. They're probably, for the most part, going out against Netchus, Bunting, and Teravainen. I think that's a matchup that they can win. If Bednar was advantageous, he would also get him out a bunch when Tony DeAngelo is on the ice, but he doesn't see much 5-on-5 time. But Colorado 3.2% projected ownership here. I really like Colorado 1. It's not the typical Carolina matchup here. I don't know, man. I like Colorado 1 here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I did write up Colorado today in the picks article. I mean, one of the big reasons was the positive leverage. They are one of those expensive lines that's not really getting a lot of ownership. 3.2% right now per the Top Stacks tool. Like that's nothing to worry about. I was looking at the defensive numbers for Teravainen and Netchus when they weren't playing with one of their top 2 centers. Like they're good, but like you said, they're not like Jordan Stahl good. Like you're missing that matchup, which is a very good thing. Like, and what I noted in that picks article is that Carolina hasn't been great defensively to start this year, outside the top 10 by expected goals against per 60 minutes, which is very un-Carolina-like. And bad goaltending has really hurt them. Freddie Anderson's still hurt. He's not playing. It's going to be Antti Raanta in net, who just got lit up in their last game. So I kind of like the Colorado side here tonight. Like Colorado's top line has looked great again so far this season. Even when McKinnon kind of busted or whatever it was in their last game, he still had the DraftKings shot bonus. You know what I mean? So like you're still getting points from them, even in the games they bust. Like Carolina is a team that typically does take a lot of penalties. Like they have a really good penalty kill, but I don't think I want to give this Colorado team too many opportunities at home on the power play. That could be a problem for Carolina as well. And as you mentioned, if that top line ever gets out against the third pair from the Hurricanes, it is going to be an absolute feast in the offensive zone for Colorado. So along with Pittsburgh, Colorado certainly is one of those expensive top lines that I am considering here tonight. Honestly, I think this is going to be a theme for me for most of the season. I don't think I'll ever stack just Colorado 2 as presently constructed, regardless of matchups. Certainly, I'm not going to do it in this one when they're probably going to go up against the Jesperi Kotkaniemi line. Colorado 3 would be a line that I would play on some nights, but they're going to get that Jordan Staal matchup, so I want to avoid that completely. So it is Colorado 1 for me that I like best on their side. Honestly, I think from Carolina, it would be the third line I would go to. I think they're one of those filler stacks that you can go to if you need something super, super cheap. I don't think I would full 3-man stack them, but again, a 2-man of like Staal and Fast or Staal and Martinook, something like that is kind of the way that I would approach Carolina tonight. But there's nothing from that side that I'm really considering my single entry.
Yeah, me either. And I think Colorado 1 is a nice little sneaky GPP option tonight. Let's move on to the next one. Winnipeg Jets with a 3 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have a 3.8 total. Edmonton loading the top line, going Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman. Edmonton also going 11-7 tonight. So, those boys are getting heavy minutes. Mason Appleton's still on the top line for Winnipeg. Like, it's just as bad as Edmonton's been defensively. Like, it's just hard to full stack anything on the Winnipeg side right now without Gabriel Velarde. I think Scheifele, Connor 2-man is fine. You want to do like Perfidi, Ehlers. I guess that's fine, but they're coming in way over owned. It's just this game is a question of are you gonna pay $25,300 for Edmonton 1 or not?
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are lots of reasons to pay it, but I also think there are ways that you can kind of not necessarily pay that much. Like I'm a guy that usually plays McDavid and Draisaitl together when I play them in GPPs, but it's not necessary. Like there's already been a game this year where there was that game in Nashville where Draisaitl just absolutely nuked the slate, but it was Draisaitl plus Hyman and Nugent Hopkins that really did the damage. You didn't need Connor McDavid on that slate. There are going to be nights like that, so I think like where they are playing together at 5-on-5, like I get that you really want to put them. I don't think it's absolutely necessary that every Edmonton lineup has both McDavid and Draisaitl in them. I think you can just get away with just playing one of them, but you absolutely want at least one of them in your lineup. It's just what the rest of it looks like. And the note here is that they're going up against Winnipeg, and Winnipeg is leaving Mason Appleton on the top line. He got almost 19 minutes of ice time in their last game, which I don't even know what we're doing anymore.
Ricky,
honestly.
baby. Ricky.
Like 3 minutes more than Nick Ehlers for Mason Appleton is completely losing the plot. Unless Ehlers lost his leg and he's just kind of pushing himself around with his stick, there's no reason to do that. And with Mason Appleton there, their defensive numbers are atrocious. 3.4 expected goals against per 60 minutes going back to last year. 3.5 actual goals against. I've watched a couple Winnipeg Jets games this year. Their penalty kill does not look as good as it did last year, and it kind of bears out when you look at their penalty kill numbers so far this season. Like they're just on the fringe of being a bottom 10 team by shot attempts against on the PK. And if you're anywhere close to a bottom 10 team on the penalty kill against this Edmonton power play when Edmonton's at home, you could have a bad time. Now, the saving grace, obviously, is the goaltending, right? Anytime you have Connor Hellebuck in net, you certainly, and he's not confirmed, but he's probably going to play because Brossois started their last game. Anytime you have Connor Hellebuck in net, you have a chance to steal a game, right? And a way better chance than most goalies. That's kind of the concern. But this is the way that Winnipeg's lining up here tonight. This is a tremendous matchup for Edmonton. And it's not that they just stack their top line, right? Like sometimes there are line combinations with Draisaitl and McDavid where they aren't super elite offensively. Hyman's not one of those combinations. 4.2 expected goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 together over the last 2 years. That's over 300 minutes together. 5.6 actual goals. You will see power play units that don't score 5.6 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Montreal probably has a couple of them. it's just an absolutely brutal line. I think the bigger question for Edmonton, like I said, is are all three guys necessary for a GPP winning lineup? I don't necessarily think that they are, but yeah, this is with the way that these lines are constructed, this is a tremendous matchup for the Edmonton top line. So as much as I do want to play Pittsburgh and Colorado, and I do, Edmonton's right up there with them, even at 25,100. On the Winnipeg side, I don't know, man. Like, if they're going to play Cole Perfidi 12 or 13 minutes a night, like, there's just nothing you can do. Like, if you guys want to play Adam Lowry on the road on a 13-game slate, like, go ahead. But I'm not, like, that's just not something that I can do. Like, obviously, you can play Alex Iafallo. He's getting top power play minutes or whatever. So is Nick Ehlers. So, like, Perfidi and Ehlers have been playing really, really well together. They're just not getting ice time. And Edmonton's actually been better defensively than I kind of expected them to be. So I don't know. Like, I really want to play Winnipeg 2 here tonight, but I'm worried that they're going to get 11 minutes of ice time because that's just the way bonus is. So I think it's Edmonton 1, Edmonton power play or bust for me out of this game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are just going to jam McDavid, Draisaitl, and leave Hyman off. I think if you want to get crazy, you just keep Hyman on there, even add in Bouchard and then go dumpster diving. I think that's a nice way to get different on this slate. My New York Rangers, you just got run over by Cole Smith with a 3.2 total. Heading into Seattle, the Kraken have a 2.8 total. Johnny Quick was just confirmed. He was eventually going to get a game. And this is probably the game here. I don't have a ton of interest in the Rangers here tonight. You want to stack either of the top two lines, that's fine. I'm not super interested in stacking against Seattle. I'm also not interested in stacking Seattle. Like, I think you can take pieces of these lines. Like, the X factor here is Quick. Like, it's a massive downgrade from Igor. Even if you think Igor hasn't been off to the best start, like, Quick, I'm surprised he hasn't retired yet. You know what I mean? So, like, there are some really cheap Seattle lines I think you can use some pieces of tonight. So, I don't know. You can use some cheap Seattle. It's basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I was just
not happy about it, though.
Yeah, of course. I was just checking one of the sites that I look at to kind of look at line movement or whatever. Over the last hour, Seattle's gone from 2.9 to 3.2 implied goal total. So that's kind of the effect of Jonathan Quick being expected to play. I also did see that Jaden Schwartz was at morning skate today. I didn't see any confirmation that he's actually going to play. He left the game last game. I mentioned that because when he got injured, it was Yanni Gourde that got moved up on the power play. And it's notable because Gordon Burakovsky on the same power play, on the same even strength line, and that power play unit has been the better unit for Seattle so far this season. On top of that, I'm sorry to say this, Josh, but your New York Rangers are giving up the most shot attempts against on the penalty kill of any team in the NHL, even more than San Jose, even more than Vancouver. It's not been a great start on the penalty kill for ye old New York Rangers, and I don't think Jonathan Quick is going to be the one that's going to solve that problem.
No.
Now, the issue is the way that Seattle runs their lines. They basically split up the power play units. They split up the ice time. They split up the players, except for the Beniers line. The Beniers line all plays together. But it is that Bjorkstrand, Schwartz, Tolvanen, and Dunn power play unit that has been the better power play unit. And it doesn't surprise me because Vince Dunn is a light years better defenseman, especially offensively, than Justin Schultz is, particularly at this point in Justin Schultz's career. So it doesn't surprise me that the power play unit with Justin Schultz is struggling while the power play unit with Vince Dunn is not. I do kind of like that Seattle second power play unit. The problem is like it's going to be Wenberg, Bjorkstrand, and Schwartz likely playing together. Bjorkstrand and Schwartz are the two guys on that second power play unit. They're going to be going up against the bottom six from the Rangers, and they're going to be shooting against Jonathan Quick. So I guess that's fine. It feels bad to say because I like Jaden Schwartz. I just kind of wish they were like, we're going to take one more game and make sure everything's fine and healed because I want Yanni Gourde on that power play unit so I can get some extra correlation. But it is Schwartz, Bjorkstrand, and Wenberg that I like best on the Seattle side. I agree with you on the Rangers. Not a whole lot that I really like. I would just be going to the top line. If I were to play the Rangers, I'd be going to Zibanejad, Kreider, and Kakko. It's the only line that they look really intent on keeping together. They aren't super expensive. We have seen the Seattle goaltending falter quite a bit over the last 3 years, this season included. So I don't mind the Rangers top line. I think for them, it would be more, if I were 20 maxing, I would probably have like maybe a 1 or 2 Rangers top line. I just don't know if I'll get there in single entry. There are other spots that I like better at that price range that are also coming in low.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's Rangers on this slate. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right for me.
Okay.
I don't know why every time I click Los Angeles Kings in the top stacks, Florida Panthers lines always pop up. But here we are. Boston with a 3 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings also have a 3 total. Jake DeBrusk out tonight. Milan Lucic up on the top line with Zacha and Pasternak. I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know. Kings coming in a little bit over-owned here. Nothing egregious. Lucic on the top line. It's probably going to be Swayman tonight. Do you have any interest in the Kings here?
No. Like we were talking before the show. Like Boston hasn't had that huge offensive outburst yet. Like there's certainly been some good DFS games from their forwards, but they just haven't been finishing. That's been the big problem. Like Zacha and Pasternak so far this season, 85 shot attempts per 60 minutes. Like that's literally what like a low level power play will put out. Problem is that they're shooting 5%. The other issue is that they're still not playing a lot. One thing I mentioned to you before the show is that last year Pasternak saw 72% of the team's power play time. This year he's seeing 63%. So they lose David Krejci, they lose Patrice Bergeron, and they play David Pasternak less on the power play. It's one of those, make it make sense moments. It could be just a small sample. Like we'll see where things stand 10 games from now, but that's a little bit of a concern. I also mentioned to you that I think Milan Lucic is just getting like, he'll get like the first shift on the top line because he used to play in Los Angeles. So it's like kind of giving him like a little homecoming. But with Jake DeBrusk out because he missed a team meeting, like don't do that. Don't pull a Josh Ho-Sang and then get your career nuked because you missed one meeting. I don't know how long Lucic really lasts on the top line, but like I don't mind Pasternak and Zacha here because the Kings penalty kill really isn't like a huge problem for me. What is a problem is going up against Kopitar and Byfield and Kempe. Like they're typically really good defensively. They've been good defensively again to start this season. That's going to be the matchup. I think I'm kind of out on Boston here. If anything, I would be going back to the Kings' second line of Fiala, Dubois, Laferriere. I noticed Fiala and Laferriere have 25 shots on goal combined this season, and I think they played 4 games, 5 games maybe. I think it's 4. 0 goals between them. So eventually that's going to start to regress, and they're going to start getting their goals. They're coming in, 3% ownership. That's not bad. If you want to leave off Laferriere, I think that's fine. The Kings are drawing over 4 power plays per game, which is really, really, really good. Now, Boston has an elite penalty kill, so I don't think you really want to target that. So it is the even strength line of Fiala, Dubois, Laferriere that I like the best in this game. I'm going to be honest. I don't think I'll be getting my late night hammer from this one. I think I'll be looking in other spots.
Agreed. That is the 12 games we have gotten through here. There is no show after us, but there will be NFL shows tomorrow, so make sure to stay tuned for those tomorrow. If you are playing NFL, I will be playing, and I just like suffering on Sundays, so I'm definitely going to be playing. Let's talk a little about defensemen and goalies here. There are some really good spend-up options here. Roman Josi sticks out to me. Makar, obviously. Then you get into this mid-range, like the 5Ks. There are a plethora of options here. Who are you liking the most?
I noticed in the projections today that Roman Josi's projection is like 33% higher than the next closest defenseman. Like it's just Josi, and then the next tier starts. So yeah, like I do like Yossi. I'll also mention Erik Karlsson. Like his price, relatively speaking, is cheaper over on FanDuel. So if you're playing on FanDuel, I think Karlsson makes a lot of sense from the Penguins. Shea Theodore still, as long as Alex Pietrangelo is out, I'll keep playing Shea Theodore for Vegas. Obviously, Evan Bouchard running the power play for Edmonton. It's the mid-price guys where things get interesting because Scott Mayfield is still out for the Islanders. And if anybody looks at the way the Islanders ran their defensemen last night, they basically just played their top 4 defensemen, which is something that they have like 5 defensemen that they'll play. And then whoever else is in the lineup gets 12 minutes or like 10 minutes. Like that's just the way it goes. Everybody else will get, depending who's healthy or not, will get 20 to 25 minutes. So I think going back to Noah Dobson makes sense. But I also think like just paying all the way down for like Alex Romanoff is probably the way to go. Oliver Ekman-Larsson for Florida, like as long as he keeps playing the minutes he is, especially in the power play spot that he's in tonight, he obviously makes sense. Quinn Hughes, I posted this in our Discord. Quinn Hughes is taking the 5th most shot attempts per minute of any defenseman in the NHL this season. And now we're up to 5 games, and he's not had a stretch like this in his career. Maybe he is finally becoming the shooting defenseman that he said that he wanted to turn into last year. So I don't mind Quinn Hughes as a one-off either. Mike Matheson, obviously from Montreal, makes a lot of sense. Justin Falk, Travis Sanheim, if you're paying under 5K. Also have to mention Zach Werenski. He's $4,000 on FanDuel. Like, it's not a good spot for Columbus, but if you get Zach Werenski for $4,000 on FanDuel, like, it's kind of tough to avoid it. For the cheap guys, I already mentioned Romanoff. In the write-up, I did bring in Kalen Addison. I think he could get some more minutes here tonight. He's only $3,900 on DraftKings, only $3,700 on FanDuel. There's another cheap defenseman to use. If you want to stay with Nashville, I think Ryan McDonough makes a lot of sense. Adam Larson, as long as he's under 4K, I'll always have interest in Adam Larson from Seattle. If you need a min-price defenseman, I think Emil Andre from Philadelphia makes sense. He didn't get a lot of minutes last game, but Mark Stahl's hurt. Rasmus Ristolainen is still out. Like, eventually, I guess they could just play Cam York and Travis Sanheim 30 minutes here tonight. I think they played 27 minutes in their last game, but I got to think Andre at least gets to 15 minutes or something here tonight. Don't mind him at 2,500. Josh Manson and Brett Pesci from that Colorado-Carolina game are 2 defensemen that are sticking out as well.
Yeah, Quinn Hughes tired of his brother scoring all the goals, so he's starting to shoot the puck more. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, if you live on Narrative Street, playing Vancouver for the first time since he left. Yeah, want to add that in here. Looking at the goalies here, Scott Wedgwood in net for Dallas. It is not Ottinger.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and then, the expensive options, Aiden Hill, Stewie Skinner, Bobrovsky, Gustafsson if he starts. Like, I don't know, like UC Saros is above 8K. Don't mind Georgiev at 8K. Like, if I'm going to spend up, that's probably the guy. But then starting to go down the list, like Comrie is starting for Buffalo. Like, I don't really like that. Jonas Johansson is just kind of a scene. Philip Grubauer, not great. Samsonite for Toronto. Like, there aren't, like, Varlamov. I'm just going down the list. Like, there isn't a goalie that I'm going, oh man, I need to get this guy in the mid-range. Who are you liking?
Georgiev's a guy for me that stood out like immediately on this slate because Colorado hasn't faced a team yet that's top 10 by shot attempts. I mentioned that in the picks article. Again, free to read over at Stokastic.com. What a great website. They haven't faced the top 10 team by shot volume yet, and Carolina's first by shot volume, at least shot attempts per minute. So, like, this could be the night where Georgiev finally sees like 37 or 38 shots or something like that. So he's a goalie that stood out to me immediately. Now, he's really expensive on FanDuel. Well, UC Saros, I think, is $7,000 on FanDuel. So I don't know why you would play a different goalie than Saros if you're playing on FanDuel here tonight. I did want to play Thatcher Demko against Florida, but Thatcher Demko's not starting, so I crossed him off. Carter Hart, or Samuel Urson, sorry, makes sense for me from the Flyers. 6,700. Like, with people playing expensive Colorado and expensive Edmonton, you might need that $300 or $400 that you could save going from a cheap goalie to a bargain basement goalie. So Samuel Urson from the Flyers, I don't mind. I honestly can't believe I'm saying this, but another guy that I'm looking towards is Jordan Binnington, 7,300. Yeah, I know. The Penguins typically put up a lot of shot volume. St. Louis allows a lot of shot volume. St. Louis also doesn't take a lot of penalties, so it's a lot of 5-on-5 shots. Honestly, if you have a little bit of cap space, I don't mind paying up for Binnington. So the guys that stood out were Georgiev, Person, Binnington. After that, like, there's just no one that I really, really want to play, unless you want to go back to the Chicago goalies facing Vegas. I think for the Chicago home opener, it's not a bad play.
Yeah, I mean, goalie's an absolute gong show. It's a lot of backups today. So, like, if you like someone, play him. Who you looking for your hat trick pick?
I'm gonna go spicy, like real spicy here tonight, and I'm doing it because he's finally getting the opportunity that he probably deserved like 2 or 3 years ago, and I want to see if he can pull it off. So I'm going Matthew Phillips from Washington.
That was my guy too.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. So let me give you another spicy pick here. Now I don't know what I'm going to do here. I had someone in mind, and I forgot.
The pricier guy that I had in mind was Mark Stone from Vegas, because I do think them Vegas against Chicago figures to be a high-paced matchup. So
I wrote it down. I should have just looked at my notes. It is a third liner. It is Jakub Vrana.
Ooh, I like that. Phillips and Vrana for some spicy hat trick picks tonight. Let's see what we can do.
Let's go, little boys. We like little boy goals. Matthew Phillips is like 4'7" on a tall day.
I thought Caulfield was small.
Yeah, he's a tiny little fella. We'll be back on Tuesday to break down a 16-game slate. Every team are playing, and it's 15 minutes tiered. That's Jake Harry heaven. I'm sure he's excited. He's got the couch ready. He might, hopefully doesn't get interrupted with becoming I'm not going to spoil it, but we'll see you on Tuesday, everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you on Tuesday. Good luck tonight, everyone.